that moral equivalence of war argument, that it brings out the finest spirit of the people and all of the rest, that was enormously persuasive. I mean, Mussolini declares the battles of the grains, the civilian conservation corps is basically a paramilitary operation, and John Dewey supports World War I because of the social benefits at war at home. Lots of progressive intellectuals were in favor of industrial armies. They thought that basically Americans should be drafted into the workforce and they work in a factory for 35 years and then they're discharged and can retire, but they'll have everything provided for them. This was a very serious model, first predicted by Edward Bellamy's Looking Forward or Looking Backward. Yeah, right, because it's set in the year 2000. In the year 2000. Anyway, so there's a... it's not the militarism. I mean, it is sort of a disgusting trope of the American left to see a uniform and yell fascist. West Point is not a fascist institution. American military defeated the ugliest forms of fascism. Police officers defend civilization against barbarians. And to simply look at a uniform and yell fascist is moronic. But it is exactly this trope that the left has bought into time and time again, and it's a cudgel to shut people up and to sort of attack the regime generally. And so, you're right, one of the points of the book is this revisionist history, to basically, not to put too unintellectual point on it, is to say, I know you are, but what am I? I mean, there is some of that, I will grant you, because I'm sick of being called a fascist, But there's another point. Another one is to identify what fascism really is. If you can get past this liberal left psychological use of fascism as simply a stand-in for the word evil, I mean, to go back to, if we can make it like the word socialist, simply mean something you may or may not disagree with, but representing a certain orientation towards social organization, then you can start having a conversation about it. And I try to go into a great deal about how this religious underpinnings of these isms, how important all of that is. That's one of the points I wanted to elucidate in the book. But the last one is, if you are constantly looking that way for the fascist threat to come, you're focusing all your energy saying that guys in uniform are fascists, the guys in uniform are Nazis, that any attempt to defend, the social order from enemies, foreign or domestic, is inherently fascist. Then creeping up on cat's paws behind you are going to be the real fascists, and no one's going to pay attention. You're not going to have anybody sort of looking that way saying, look at Hillary Clinton's It Takes a Village, which is replete. I mean, it was P.J. O'Rourke, not me. I think P.J. O'Rourke is the only other living conservative to have actually read that book. It is amazing how all of these fascist themes come forth in there. You have to have business and government working hand in hand. There's this cult of unity. She has this, my favorite example in there is, one of the famous, anatomical features of fascism that the left always likes to point to, and they're right, is the creation of false crises to mobilize society. I mean, that's the moral equivalent of a war thing. That's why we had a war on poverty, for example. You have this desire to create crises because that will get people to drop their own objections to a social program and rally around the flag or rally around the government or rally around their leaders and all that kind of stuff. And in It Takes a Village, Hillary Clinton just flat out declares that every child anywhere born is immediately in crisis. Just boom, crisis. Government's got to step in. And she goes into this, and she does it in this namby-pamby, marshmallow-soaked in honey kind of way that you don't see what she's talking about. But, one of the things, in 1984, there's all this stuff, these jumbo-trons saying, work makes you free or whatever they say. She has this passage in It Takes a Village where she says, because these kids are in crisis and because parents need the government and because her definition of civil society are basically a bunch of bureaucrats. She thinks that civil society isn't the space between the individual and government. It's merely the arena in which government coordinates people, which is a fundamentally fascist conception. She says, because these kids are in crisis, what we need, wouldn't it be wonderful if we had these television screens that we could put up, quote, wherever people gather, that would teach people how to breastfeed, teach mothers how to raise kids, teach men how to be good fathers. And I don't know, I mean, is it so obvious if you're standing online at the DMV and there's this jumbotron of, an instructional video running on permanent loop 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, telling you how to raise your kids, that is just, it can't be fascist because fascists are bad people? I mean, it seems to me so quintessentially fascist. And we're not going to get the jackbooted thug stomping on a human face that you get in 1984, but we might get the brave new world, where the biggest problem there is how to deal with the fact that everybody is so happy. And what we're going to get is a nanny kind of fascism, if we get one at all. And it's going to, but the point is that simply because the nanny state wants to hug you doesn't mean it's not tyrannical if you don't want to be hugged. Thank you very much.